I would say make sure you have emotional support. I think we don't talk enough about that. Yeah, I've looked at my bank balance. I have enough money to survive for next 2 years. But make sure you have emotional support because it's gonna get gruesome. You wake up in the morning and one email can ruin your entire day. It can crush your dreams. You can the hope you were having of raising money from this investor, the hope you were having from this customer, everything can be slashed with one email. So at that point you will need some emotional intelligence, and I'll be honest, I didn't have a lot of it, and I'm not very good at it, but I'm very lucky to be surrounded by really emotional intelligent people who do take my call. So I think the way I put it in one line is, don't chase checkbook to get money, chase phone books. If you have a powerful phone book, people you can call with numbers, that's much powerful.
Welcome to the Founders Journey podcast. Inspiration, education for founders by founders.
Welcome back to the Founders Journey podcast. I'm Peter Dean. I'm usually the co-host. Greg Moran is stuck on a plane. So if you're here to listen to Greg or see him, I'm sorry, you're stuck with me. But I have a really good friend with me today, someone I'm really excited about introducing to you and getting into a conversation with. Dhairya. Now, I usually don't try to say your name, and I usually call you D. Did I hit it? All right, cool.
Spot on. I love that.
That was probably the first time I got it right. So he's been a serial entrepreneur since age 19 when he started his first tech company. Over the last decade, he's been the founder of and CEO of Ycenter, which we've talked a lot about. Can't wait to ask you questions about that. Where he's worked with universities, Fortune 500 companies, startups, government agencies. In fact, he was just on a call with a government agency before he hopped on. With over 30 countries across 4 continents. He's been a public speaker at events, the United Nations, World Bank, TEDx, really cool story there. A number of top universities. I know there's more. And his work at Ycenter has been awarded by Inc. magazine, Entrepreneurs magazine, and he's received, this is something I just learned about him, a Genius Visa from the U.S. Immigration Services. And that basically tells you our relationship. I have to ask him to kind of use smaller words when he talks to me so I understand what he's saying. But Dhairya, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Peter. Really excited to have a chat with you. And I got a chance to see a couple of other episodes. We really miss Greg here, but I hope we can catch him up later. But I'm excited to be one of the founders on your podcast.
Yeah, awesome. So why don't you start kind of your early in your career, which was at the age of 19. Can you share with us what inspired you to venture into entrepreneurship at such a young age and how that shaped your approach to business?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll first give you a more flashy response, which is actually the more truthful response. And then I'll give you the response I hope I had, which is not true. But I think somewhere deep within my heart, that is what I hoped would have been the right reason of why I became an entrepreneur. So when I was 19, I had read enough books about American entrepreneurs. We all have Jobs, Bill Gates, all of that. And I think one thing consistent I saw was they all dropped out of college, built billion-dollar companies, and people made movies about them. And I wanted to be that cool. When I was 19, I wanted to make a company, drop out of school, make $1 billion, and hope somebody makes a movie out of me. And my parents were really worried because they knew my motivations. They're like, you're going to drop out soon, I guess. You started a business. That's really, I would say, the flashy object syndrome that I was chasing when I was 19, because I had read all the amazing, brilliant, romanticizing entrepreneurship things, And so, yeah, that was the reason I started the company. Now I'll give you the response that I sometimes have given to people, but that's not really completely accurate. I saw a problem in the market. I wanted to solve it. And that's why I started a company. But that's not honest, to be fair. Even though I did end up solving a problem, I didn't end up making the money, which I think is truly the definition of entrepreneurship. You solve a problem and you make money doing that, which is what I did. But that was not the reason. It was an after effect of starting the company. So yeah, that was my not so very strong reason to be an entrepreneur. But also, besides all of this, I had always felt I wasn't. I have been an entrepreneur. In fact, Peter, I don't think I've said this recently to a lot of people, but I didn't know the word entrepreneur when I actually became one. Even when I became one, I remember after starting my first business, I was actually at an event where they invited me to speak. I was just 19. I was 20 by then, and I said I'm a businessman, and somebody corrected me like, no, 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 you're not a businessman, you're an entrepreneur. I'm like, I think I've read this word, but I really don't know how to say it first, because it's actually not even an English word, it's French. The English just borrowed it, like a lot of other things, but it's a French word. And I used to say it in a very weird way. I didn't know how to pronounce it, you know. So I just said businessman. It was easy for me to say businessman. And then I understood the difference. So I became an entrepreneur before I knew how to say the word. That's my cool bragging right, if I may. But yeah, that's a little bit of how I got started at 19.
What would your distinction be between businessman and entrepreneur now? What do you
Sure.
think the difference is?
If you open up a store, you're
Yeah.
selling commodities because you know that people need umbrellas when it's raining out there. There is a component of entrepreneurialism in doing
Yeah.
that, but it's usually, I think, business, because we already know that when it rains, you need an umbrella or a rain jacket. You know that. That's
Mhm.
a very basic logic. I feel entrepreneurs are the ones who are, there's almost a component of innovation and invention built into it. So you have identified a problem, which I think a businessman does too, but you are now about to tackle that problem in an extremely creative way and build a scalable business out of that opportunity. And I think that's an entrepreneur. So it's not a very simple path. I think business, obviously, as complicated as it is, and every entrepreneur eventually becomes a businessman, because once your company
Mhm.
grows, you're managing people and you're managing
Yeah.
funds and you're filing taxes. That's business. That's when, if you're truly an entrepreneur, you're like, I'm getting bored, like, this is not who I am. Like, I don't like doing all of that. I love
Yeah.
the risk part of it. So yeah, I think that's a big distinction. An entrepreneur is really living on the edge, and the businessman has their own risk, but they're more internal operational risk, if I may, not as much of a creative risk. So yeah, that's a big difference. In fact, I had the difference right at my home. My dad was always a small time business owner, but I wouldn't traditionally call him an entrepreneur, because he entered a business that somebody recommended him, and he didn't go to college, and he would tell me this often, that I had no option, nobody would hire me, so I had to get into business. So he ended up doing a business, very traditional business, selling, buying stuff, kind of stuff. um, but I think an entrepreneur, as I mentioned, there's almost a component of innovation and invention and a very high risk and a high reward associated with entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's really cool you say that. So,
Yeah.
that's a really good segue. So, tell us about Ycenter. Like, what was the foundational vision that drove you to establish Ycenter?
Sure. So I started the company in 2014, but I've been talking for last 10 minutes, and you will realize things are not as linear with me.
Yeah.
So after my graduation, which is a whole different story, which we may or may not get into, but I graduated with my master's in biomedical engineering, and I took off to Africa after that. And in between, I got a job. I quit a job on first day. So that's the whole big story.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's skip that part. And then I ended up in Africa for living there in a country where no one speaks English. So I was in Mozambique. They speak Portuguese there. So I'm living in this country with, a bachelor's, a master's, and I went to Africa, to that country, thinking I'm going to change the world. Here I am. I've arrived. This is my time. I'm just going to fix all the problems. And I realized I couldn't do most of the things I wanted to do because I don't even speak the goddamn language. You know, I mean, think about any entrepreneur, not even just literally speaking the language, but if you're an entrepreneur and if you don't speak your customer's language, how are you ever going to sell anything? In my context, I was not purely starting a business when I was in Africa, but I was hoping to be able to solve the problems, but I couldn't do that if I can't even communicate. Communication is key for entrepreneurs. So I failed miserably, actually, multiple times over the 6 months in Mozambique. But there was one specific turning point in my living experience in Mozambique, and that was I saw somebody. I was working in a hospital because of my biomedical engineering background. I saw somebody die, because they didn't have access to the right medical device. And even when they did, there was no power. So we needed a generator which was broken. And I have theoretically learned how a generator works as an engineer, but I really couldn't do much. And I realized there's a big gap between classroom knowledge and the world problems that we are surrounded by. A lot of institutions teach people how to be successful and how to think linearly, but I think when you enter the world, you realize world is anything but linear. And what you really want to learn is how to deal with failure. We spend a lot of time teaching people how to be successful, but we spend very little time on teaching people how to deal with failure. And I think when I started failing with my multiple projects living in Mozambique, I'm like, there has to be a way to fix this gap between educational institution learning and what the world really needs, the hands-on skills. So Y Center was born out of fixing that gap of traditional learning inside the four walls of a classroom and the real world complexity that we need to prepare for. So that's how the company was launched, to solve complex global problems and building programs to skill people around that. And over the 10 years, I got a chance to start with working with universities to build that skill set with students, young people. But we have now evolved organically into providing that skills to government officials, to working with corporates, to working with startups all around the world. So that's a little bit of story of how Y Center started off.
Yeah. So you said in the beginning that it would be a lie to say you were solving a problem, but like this
Yeah,
was just solving a problem.
this
And
was.
so when you started Y Center, it's like a tech startup, but it's different.
Yeah,
Your goal wasn't, it doesn't sound like, maybe you can correct me if you're wrong. Your goal wasn't like, I'm going to build this business and scale it and sell it. You were fundamentally solving a problem.
yeah,
You know, what was your goal? Like, tell me about your goal when you started Y Center, because this is very different than your
yeah.
19-year-old self saying, hey, let's have this huge exit. So,
Absolutely right. In fact, Peter, my first 3 years of Y Center, everybody used to ask me, "Oh, so what app are you building, or what website are you building?" Because
yeah.
by default, entrepreneurship became tech entrepreneurship. You must be building something, you must be doing something with technology. Just people just started assuming, I'm a young entrepreneur out there just out of college, and I'm an engineer. So the
Yeah.
cards were, stacked up saying that, yeah, you have to be a tech entrepreneur, which was not the case in my case. There was technology involved, but the goal of the company, and in the beginning of this podcast, as you said, I said my 19-year-old was romanticizing entrepreneurship. But then there was that reason I hope was the reason back then, which wasn't the case. But when I did it again, I was 22 or 24, something like that. Yeah, 24, I think. Oh gosh, I'm old. Anyway, so I'm
No,
so
you're not.
24. I this time I had been through the journey of that 19-year-old starting a company. And this time when I started Y Center, my reason was right. I didn't want to start a company because I can have a 10x multiplier in revenue and then sell it and go off, live on a beach house. I still love beaches and I would love to have a beach house. But the goal this time was very clear. Here is a big, massive problem. And I want to just focus on solving that in as many ways I could and make money doing that. In fact,
Mhm.
Peter, people would confuse in the initial days for Y Center to be almost a not for profit organization, because I'm
Yeah.
working in Africa, I'm working with healthcare, I'm working in villages. And so I felt that was great, because as an entrepreneur, I love to be challenged. I love to be told that, hey, I think you're not going to make it. I think your model sucks. I loved all of that. I thrive on critique. I
Yeah.
don't take it to heart. I thrive on it. So I'm like, bring it on. And here I am building a for profit company, working with farmers and doctors in Africa, trying to solve problems in agriculture, food systems, and healthcare, and and making money out of it. And somebody actually called me out saying, not exactly in those words, but hey, this sounds a little hypocritic to me. Like, you are making money while solving problem for people who don't have money to give you. I'm like, there are businesses on this planet right now that make money actually selling crap things, like
Yeah.
absolutely knowingly selling wrong things, and they don't have any embarrassment doing that. I'm actually doing good. And I have a creative business model where most of the people I work for, my beneficiaries, they don't pay me directly. We have a creative model. We get funded through government, through large foundations. So it's a very public private sector, very creative, collaborative relationship. It's not a traditional business that you read off a business book and you like, okay, I know how to start a business. This is my business model canvas, and I'm just going to launch it. No, it doesn't work that way. And in fact, I feel it doesn't work that for any successful business out on the planet. Nobody has started a successful business reading just one business book. Everybody has had a very unique approach to creating their own
Hmm.
business. Some people started it because they have brilliant corporate experience of 20 years and now they know a problem that big companies cannot solve, so they start their own little company. Some people started because they just have access to a very cool network of people who need their support, so they start a business because they know a lot of people who want to buy from them. I started because I saw a huge problem and I thought I have enough risk appetite to travel around the world and build a multi-stakeholder, multi-collaborative solution. And that's exactly what Y Center was about.
You talked about what other people said about your business, but
Mhm.
how do you how do you measure impact that Y Center does? Like what metrics or indicators? Because you're working with universities, some Fortune
Yeah.
500 companies, or
Yes.
even bigger,
Yeah.
and government agencies as well. Like, how do you measure your impact? Like, what are the things that like that you look at?
So there are three things that we measure in the company.
Yep.
One is, which every company should measure, how much money you're making.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not a business, it's a hobby.
Right. Yep.
So yes, we measure the financial impact. What goes
Yep.
out, what comes in, simple P&L. And if you don't have that, there is no business here. I mean,
Yep.
that's just the most basic 101. So that's let's not even discuss that. That happens. Now there are two other metrics. One is we actually measure the diversity of sectors we operate in, because that's very important to Y Center. Our mission is to solve complex world problems, and the problems exist in the field of food, gender parity, climate action. It's just all around the spectrum. Education, healthcare, it's just way too many problems. So we actually measure how diverse any given year for Y Center has been. Uh, I remember, when we first started out, maybe 5 years into the game, I remember I used to wake up in the morning. My first 3 hours in the morning, I'm talking to universities, building a program for them. Afternoon 3 years, I'm spending talking 3 hours. I'm spending time with some ministry folks in Kenya, trying to work on policy system. In the night, I'm talking to product manager of a large multi-billion dollar 300-year-old pharmaceutical company, trying to see how they can sell their products in Hong Kong much faster and in a better way. And it gave me such a high that I'm doing like so many things in a single day. I'm talking to people from 6 different time zones in my 24 hours, sitting on my desk in my home. It gave me such a big high, and I almost started translating that into an impact metric at Y Center, because the more diverse we are able to reach more population with our solutions, with our through our clients. So that is definitely one of the big metric that we look at, how diverse we are. We don't want to repeat ourselves. We are in the business of creative economy, creative problem solving. So for creativity, divergence is very important. We don't want to be siloed. So that's second. And third one is, how many people, how many lives are we affecting? A very cool example is, last year we built out an AI based tech platform for governments so they can build better inclusive policies in Africa. And we work with 5 different African governments. In fact, I went on site, I got a chance to meet some of the folks. We don't measure how many government people or how much time it took for us to build the platform, but we see how many potential people will benefit from the policies that are designed using this platform. And the answer is 30 million farmers. So metrics like that are inspiring for the entire team. I have a junior engineer who's just out of college and who worked on this project, and now she can actually go out and say, I was part of a project that's going to affect 30 million farmers in a continent I've never traveled to. So that is a very important metric for us to hire people, for us to retain people, for us to make an unabashed claim that this is who we are and this is what we do. So yeah, those are, I think, the three things we've been monitoring
Yeah.
closely.
This
Yeah.
is really good because there's a lot of students that think,
Yeah.
I want to do something that has an impact.
Yeah.
And some of them are thinking like you did when you were 19,
Yeah.
like I want to build. And those of us that have done it a while, it's not that sustainable to just chase profit. It has to be something you're passionate about, because
Yeah.
profit it's, it doesn't serve you in that. I mean, it does, but it's not like the reason you're doing something always. If it is,
Yeah.
it's really hard to kind of make it through all of the ups and downs. You really have to
Yeah.
care about something. And so, um, what would you say to like a student? They're thinking, I
Mm-hmm.
want to do this really. You kind of prove you can do it. You can do something that's
Mm-hmm.
really something you want to solve that maybe no one else would see an ability to get profit in. Like, what would you say to someone like that if I was a student saying, "Hey, how do you do this? Like, how do you do what you did?" You know?
Yeah. Yeah. My first immediate reaction is don't do it. I'll tell you why.
We've talked about that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy tough. I think entrepreneurship is one of the worst ways to make money until you start making a lot of it.
Yeah.
But the initial years, you go through hell,
Yeah.
and entrepreneur. So I read this line and I made it my own, and I think entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey, but you're not alone. There are
Yeah.
many people having this lonely journey at the same time,
Yeah.
but it is very lonely. It's
Yeah.
extremely lonely. Now, enough about all the pessimism. Let's talk about how you do it if you have to do it. First is don't jump into entrepreneurship as a student because you want to make money. I already established that because there are better ways to make money. If you have a good college degree, go and get a job.
Yeah.
I mean, good luck with that. I've heard there are challenges around that in today's world. But so let's put the money aside. But there has been something that really you can't stand that's broken in the world, and you feel you can make a business out of it. Very important, which means you can make money out of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can still be an activist who can go out
Yep.
and fight on the streets, and nothing wrong with that. There's some amazing activists out there who fight for our rights and other people's
Yeah.
rights. But that's not entrepreneurship. That's very different. But if you think something's broken and you can't stand the sight of that broken thing, and you believe you can build a business around it, then you go for it. Now, to add a layer of optimism to that, you're young, you're just graduating, or you probably haven't even graduated. You are a student just out of uni or college. The cool part is nobody takes you seriously. That's actually good news. So if you fail, nobody cares because everybody was hoping anyway. This is a joke. You're a student. Like, what? You're not going to be a billionaire. If you succeed, you're a wonder story. People love you anyway. So I think it's a win-win, and I think it's a great time to start business if you're a student. You start fast, you fail fast, and you succeed sooner, whatever. But I think starting quicker allows you that opportunity to fail sooner so you can get on and try other things as well. So yeah, I think the best time to start a business is when you are a student. The absolute best time is when you are actually on campus, because you also get access to a lot of prize money. You get access to a lot of like grants and stuff like that, and nobody takes you seriously. Everybody just like thinks it's too cute that you're just 18 and you're starting a business. I'm like, people will, if you are just a basic good presenter, just with some couple of slides, you can get a good $5,000-10,000 as just basic money from somebody who is interested in supporting you. I think now, being on the other side and being a little older, I would support a student entrepreneur who is looking for $5,000 if they are a great communicator and they can convince me that they are the next big thing. So yeah, I think it's the best time to start a business.
That's cool. So, back to Y Center. Um, you talk a lot about like sustainability. So, how do you ensure at Y Center the businesses operate sustainably and staying true to its purpose of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
programs that you put in place?
So we actually created a value charter in the
Yeah.
company back in 2020. It's an internal document. There are two slides on that value charter. One is who do we work with and who do we not work with.
Oh,
We
interesting.
also wrote that, yeah, and we have used that who do we not work with twice. We had a company that was selling products that we don't believe should be sold to people of that demographic.
Hmm.
We were just opposed to the product philosophy itself. So as much as we were the money we were getting from that, we chose not to work with a company like that. Even though we were getting the financial outcome from that company, but we were not hitting the other two impact metrics, like I mentioned. Are we solving a real complex problem, and is it diverse enough? And none of that was true, and our value system was completely not aligned with that company. That happened again with one of the largest consumer goods company. In fact, I think that was last year in January, and off the record, I'll actually show you the email as well that I sent to that company. Uh, We respectfully told them that we cannot work with you, because the way they were treating my employees, even in the negotiation phase, they were straight up abusive to one of my employee, during the call. There's like and one of the things they said, without getting into too much detail, is like, you guys are too small to ask us for a contract. We are not signing a contract. Why don't we just get started with the work? We'll pay you. Where are we going to go? We are such a big company. We are one of the world's largest company. You think we are going to run away? So just get started with the work. We'll sign the contract maybe next month. And we realize it doesn't matter what size of a company you are. A contract is a contract. There are ways to do business, and it's about professionalism. There's nothing personal about it. And we were initially, we were okay. We were going for the ride, because obviously the flashy object syndrome, we want the
Yeah.
client, we want to work with them. But I think the breaking point for us was not the contract as much, but the way they thought of us, where they didn't respect us enough, or our employees. And my question was, if they're not respecting us right now, what will happen 6 months down the line as we get into business with them? Because this is going to keep going on. This is going to pile on. And we noticed how they behaved internally with their own team members. And we didn't like that. But that's okay. That's their choice. Maybe that's their culture. But when that culture started permeating into my team, I couldn't stand that. So I told one of my CEOs that, hey, send them a letter, send them an email saying, we don't want to work with you guys. We have a cultural misalignment. That's literally what we wrote in the email, and I'm happy to share that with you. So sorry. And if something changes in the future, we are open to collaboration. So we kept that door open respectfully. The company called me saying, hey, your employee sent me this nasty letter, which wasn't nasty, saying that you guys are not going to work with us. I thought I'll give you the call because you're the big boss, and maybe you can talk to him and put some sense in him. And I said, sir, with all respect, I'm the one who told him to do that. So I'm sorry. We are not working with you. Have a great day. So that's how I think,
Those
Peter,
are
we have
tough.
ensured it. Yeah.
Yeah, those are tough days. I mean, unfortunately, we've had to have the same conversations with, and it's, if you work in a big company, like, you may not be empowered to make that decision, right? Oh,
Yeah.
you're stuck working with this company, and
Yeah.
and it's not always every person at those companies, it's just
Yeah.
whoever you're working with, and and the
Exactly.
situation, maybe who knows what's going on in their life. But if
Yeah.
it's not good and they're not treating you with respect, it doesn't make sense. Like, that's really
Absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah.
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 So, advice as, for aspiring entrepreneurs, based on
Okay.
your experience, um, what, um, what, what would you recommend to someone that's building a company with a strong purpose at its core? What would you
Mm,
recommend to an aspiring entrepreneur? You talked about doing a lot of work while you're at university, but what would
yes.
be something else? Yeah.
Uh, of course, I'm a big proponent. Have a business model in place. Figure out how you're going to make money. What are
Yeah.
you selling? You can have the best purpose on the planet, but if you're not going to figure out a way to sustain, there is no business. I repeat
Yeah.
that 100 times. It's a hobby. So figure out a business model. How you're going to make money, who you're going to make it from, and how much you're going to make. Again, you probably are going to change all of this in 5 years. You may be selling to somebody else. You may be not making as much, or maybe making more than what you thought, and you'll be, having a completely different model. That's okay. But start that from day one. Get in the habit of how this is going to be sustainable. Purpose is great, but purpose and profit go hand in hand. So you better have that part covered. So I would say that's one key suggestion more than an advice. I don't have really advices, because I think any entrepreneur would tell you we are constantly learning. So
Yeah.
I don't feel I'm at a point where I can tell somebody, oh yeah, figure do this exactly and you'll be successful, because I don't want to be hold against that. In fact, I think nobody can give entrepreneurial advice. It's for each to figure it out. I've been told, and I tell the same thing to others. I can tell you the mistakes I made, and the reason I'm telling you this is so that you can go and make new mistakes. That's it.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship is about making so many mistakes and still not stopping, just going mistake from mistake and figuring out how you're going to get better at it. So don't stop at anything. I would say make sure you have emotional support. I think we don't talk enough about that. Entrepreneurship is, people talk about financial. Yeah, I've looked at my bank balance. I have enough money to survive for next 2 years without
Yeah.
having a job. I have health insurance from my parents. I have health insurance, blah, 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 all of that. But make sure you have emotional support, because it's going to get gruesome. You wake up in the morning, and one email can ruin your entire day. It can crush your dreams. You can the hope you were having of raising money from this investor, the hope you were having from this customer, everything can be slashed with one email. So at that point, you will need some emotional intelligence. And I'll be honest, I didn't have a lot of it, and I'm still like, I'm not very good at it. But I'm very lucky to be surrounded by really emotional, intelligent people who do take my call. So I think the way I put it in one line is, don't chase checkbook to get money, chase phone books. If you have a powerful phone book, people you can call with numbers, that's much powerful. So phone book is greater than checkbook for an entrepreneur.
Oh, that's awesome. I know you're one of my people. We're that
Yeah,
I get to talk to.
I'm
Um,
glad.
I'm very honored to have you as that person. So one of the questions, I'll have more of a positive view on this. Like, if you went back, like, and what would a mistake that you would tell someone,
Yeah,
like, don't do? Like, something that, like,
yeah,
you started in the
yeah.
beginning, what is something you think you would teach an entrepreneur?
Oh wait,
What
I have,
maybe not to.
yeah, I can write 1,000 pages about what not to do,
Yeah.
and I can write probably 10 pages on what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. First, don't quit your job on day one, which is what I did. That's stupid, straight up. Don't do that. Yeah.
It was day 1 of your job.
Day one,
Just so
five
people
thirty.
understand.
I have 8 hours of
You went to
corporate
your
experience.
Yeah.
9 to 5. 5:30. I'm like, I'm done on day one. I never went back again. So that's my my employees have more corporate experience than I do in my company. So don't do that. Uh, Figure out your health insurance. Very important in America. This is a very American advice, I feel, because I have been in situation, where I was scared. So I think once, yeah, that thing is very important. Like, I don't know how you're going to get it, but you need that. I'm not talking about having money. That is like something you can do by having small gigs here and there. But
Yep.
insurance is expensive in this country. So figure that out so you're healthy. But one mistake that if I go back, because these are the mistakes I made, I didn't have health insurance for 5 years and I suffered, multiple times. Um, but I think one mistake that I would go back among the other things I already shared would be a little more pragmatic. I'm a dreamer. I'm a crazy dreamer. Like, I'm that Reid Hoffman guy. Like, jump from, he had a quote, the LinkedIn founder. Entrepreneurs are the ones who jump from the cliff and then figure out a plane before they hit the ground. Something like that. I'm
Yeah.
that guy. Like, I jump off without a parachute. I don't believe in plan B, but I think people, you should have a plan B. One of the reasons is, I think maybe I'm also speaking because I'm a little older and I have a family now, and I realize the
Yeah.
importance of plan B. Uh, so I think you would want to think about it. I still feel plan B makes you weaker, and you are not putting your 100% in plan A because in your head you're thinking, "Oh, I have a plan B."
Gotcha.
So it's a double-edged sword, but it's really possible that you might need it someday, because I didn't have one. So if I really would suck at everything, and if I'm constantly failing and it's just not working for me, I had no choice. In fact, I had to leave America and go back home to India and stay with my parents and figure something out. I don't even have a CV because I quit my job and I don't have a resume. I can't even apply for jobs. I'm the most unemployable person on this planet because I have no work experience per se. um, Being a CEO and always being a founder of my own company, I'm not used to working under directions, I guess, so much. I can collaborate, but I can't work under direction, especially when I think there's a better way to do things. That's frustrating sometimes. I've heard from people in large companies that you're supposed to do it this way because you've been told. I can't do that. I'm broken. So I think going back, I would fix a few of those things myself. Like, have a plan B, be open to other ideas because it may or may not work for you. So I think a little bit of realism may help some people, and I'm saying this purely out of, I would say, love and respect for every potential entrepreneur out there, that
Yeah.
have a little bit of empathy for yourself. Like, give yourself
Mhm.
that room to breathe. I didn't give myself that room and I burnt out.
Yeah.
I'm still here, thankfully, and happy and healthy in the best way that I could be. But I feel I should have taken better care of my mental and physical health, which I didn't. So I think that is one thing I would definitely change about my thing if I go back in the past. And I would ask people to make less of that mistake. I didn't exercise, none of that. I was just working 24/7. Like, some days I slept in my co-working office space where I used to be, and then it became a security threat for my co-working. They're like, "You can't stay here all night. You can't sleep here." Like, yeah, you are working, we get it, but like this building. this building has to close at some point. You've been
Yeah,
here night overnight. And they asked me, like, we've been seeing you, the security camera. You haven't been home twice in 2 days. Like, where do you shower?
you
I'm like,
you
I
should go
didn't.
home.
Yeah, and I didn't. Like, when do you eat your meals? And I'm like, I don't. And that was not healthy. So I think
Yeah,
you need to focus on
that's
those
really
things.
good advice. Like we've
Yeah.
heard this. This is a theme. This is not the first time we've heard this. We've
Yeah.
had a number of guests come on and talk about this. Actually, a lot of
Yeah.
entrepreneurs fall in that trap,
Yeah.
and they overwork themselves. They don't
Yeah.
take care of their health. They don't take care of their
Yeah.
mental health,
Yeah.
because this can take a really big toll on you. The
Yeah.
outcome could be positive, but there's a diminishing return at some point where
Yes.
you're not getting, it's not good. The
Yeah.
output isn't going to be the same as if you really take care of yourself. And that's, as an entrepreneur who's been doing this for a while, like you, that's where we need to have a little more patience, right?
Yeah.
We want to we want to jump off the cliff right away. And what you're saying is, okay, plan to jump off the cliff,
Yeah.
know you're going to
Exactly.
do it, and know, okay, if I can't land and I can't build a parachute before I hit the ground, what is my alternative, right? How do I take care of myself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. But still
And
jump.
yes, you should
Still
jump,
jump. You
but
should
think
jump. That's
about it for a
entrepreneurship.
second.
But
Yeah,
but plan the jump. Plan the
yeah,
jump. Yeah.
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 This is really good. So one other thing I want to ask you, because
Yeah.
I know you. I've known you for a few months now, and we got
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
meet, and it's just amazing. It's really helpful for me to talk to that. For all the listeners, Dee is one of my new friends who knows what it feels like to go through the journey. You need
Yeah.
to find them. Greg, obviously, and I started this podcast because he was one of those people.
Yeah.
You need more. You need as many as you can get. People
Exactly.
that are going through this process with you, so that they can say, hey, take care of your mental health. You need to take
Yeah.
care of your body and exercise.
Hmm.
You need to do these things for yourself and your other people around you.
Yeah.
But one thing I know about you that you probably won't say, and we can talk about your new business. What did
Mhm.
you do to get prepared? First of all, tell people just quickly what your new business is, and
Yeah.
how did you prepare yourself? This is really important. How did you prepare yourself to go in this new, different industry?
Yes, that's a great question. So working over Ycenter, I had one of my clients from the US government, and we worked together, built some products. And she told me about how broken the world of international trade is in America and around the world, but especially in US, and how it affects the small and medium businesses. And I'm talking about people dealing a few millions of dollars of international trade, and what they have to go through, the amount of documentation, the amount of paperwork, the amount of compliance. It's just, and I had no idea about what international trade is about. So when I learned from her name is Simona, she's based out of California. I almost, because I'm an outsider to this world, I'm like, that can't be true. Like, this is crazy. Like, this seems so ancient to me. This is like, it's the world of international trade looks like it's stuck in 80s or 90s. And you kind of validated that for me, Peter,
Yeah,
because you worked in the field of international logistics, and you told me that you actually wrote a business plan to
yeah.
solve this problem. And when I told you that it's still not solved, like,
I
you were
was in
surprised too.
1999 or something. I
There
wrote.
you go. Yeah. I didn't even know what was going on in 99, but as of 2024, it didn't make sense to my engineering brain. I'm
Yeah,
like, I get my food delivered in like less than 10 minutes, and I have everything on my phone. I have apps for everything, even complex things. Even when buying a new house, I did e-signatures during pandemic, some of
yeah,
those things, and a lot of those things, virtual tour for houses. But international trade seems to be so far from technology. Let's bring some tech inside, disrupt it, and make it easy for small and medium businesses in America to be able to handle their paperwork, their documentation, and manage their transactions. So that's exactly my new business, TradeZeris, and we are using AI to help manage international trade transactions faster by almost 80%. So if you're spending 6 months, we want to cut it down to 2 months, maybe even less than that, using our software. So that's my new business. And how did I get into it? I mean, the short story is, obviously, one of my clients turned into my business partners, which is the best kind of a business, because you've already worked with this person over 3 to 4 years. You know what you can do together. So I think that was great for both of us. But also, I mentioned very early on the podcast, as an entrepreneur and a businessman, I'm an entrepreneur and maybe a little bit of businessman, but I'm bigger of an entrepreneur. It's been 10 years of Y Center, and thankfully it's doing good. We have a team, and we are running programs and all of that, working with corporates and blah blah blah. But I'm like, what's my next big thing for next 10 years? I can't keep doing the same thing. I have that compulsive need to look at the next big thing, to look at the next opportunity and the next problem that I want to solve. I'm addicted to problems. I love crazy, complex problems. And I found this to be a good, crazy enough problem where I can invest my next 10 years of my life, hopefully, and maybe more, who knows, or maybe less if we get there faster. And this business, Peter, in my head, I want to make the 10x multiplier that Y Center was not built for. This is a product business. And because having that kind of a goal tells me that I can reach more people. It's a product business, and I think getting 10x, 20x, and having that multiplier as a goal is really powerful, because it's a very as much as there's creativity and innovation, it's traditionally the typical tech startup that I'm building now. So
Yeah.
what everybody was telling me, what is your app and what is your website? I have an answer now in 2024. It's straight
Yeah.
Exodus. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. And the part that you didn't tell people again was that you went to school on yourself, on trade, just so that you knew about it. And you spent a
Yeah.
lot of time doing that. And
So
that's
since
something I know about you is you
yeah.
really went and educated yourself so you knew what you're
Yeah, the
talking.
day I decided I'm getting into the business, I enrolled myself into an online course by International Chamber of Commerce. I took the course over the year, and then it was an optional test where they would grade me. I'm like, it's not optional. I need to know if I understand enough. I took the test. It was a 1 hour test, and I think I cracked it in 15 minutes. So I think I know a little bit about trade. But of course, I understand the fact there's a big difference between theory and practice. That's what
Yeah.
Y Center was all about.
Yeah.
So now I have a good theoretical foundation. I think the practice comes with obviously doing more of it. So now,
Yeah.
as we get into the markets, my customers will educate me more than I can learn from taking a course.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming. If people want to reach out to you, where would they find you? How do they find you? They want to get in touch with you.
Yeah, my bragging right is Google me. You'll find me. I'm everywhere. But it's my first name, last name.com. I have my personal website, which has my entire company, all my company links, all my blogs, all the
Yep.
publications, everything. Ycenter.org, y-center.org. I'm on there. It shows what we do and how to get hold of me. LinkedIn, X, Instagram, as I said, just Google me. I'm in a lot of places. And now you can also find me on Founders Journey podcast, which probably you are already here.
Awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much, Peter, for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, if you like this episode, like it, share it, and follow us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts.